I am here for this age of the Lions owning 2 football teams. Hello, everyone. Welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. It is Monday. We have made it to October 2nd, 2023. It is Monday, and that means Fletcher Sharpe talking about all things sports today, because frankly, we've got a lot to get into, and somebody, I think, Fletcher Sharpe, that we need to honor.
I used to hate the Tigers. Like, not hate, but like I was not a fan. Like, when I started trying to be a fan was when Bobby Higginson was like the guy, and they lost 116 games, and I was like, I cannot support this. So when they signed Miguel Cabrera to be a part of their roster, I was like, we'll see. And he actually made me care about baseball again, just as a whole. Like, I did not care at all. And then watching him play and just how good he was, the joy he played with, the fact that all of his teammates are like, this guy's a really great teammate. Actually, even getting to see him a few times through media access and just seeing, like, he's not playing a character. That's literally just him. He's a effervescent type of guy. He made me care. He energized, put the battery in my back to like Detroit Tigers baseball. So the fact that this was his last game this weekend made me a little sad. Like, made me a little emotional. Like, I understand, like, you know, everyone has it, but like, I don't really experience that with sports. So when I was watching, you know, his kids come out to take him out of the game with AJ Hinch, it kind of made the room get a little dusty.
Have you ever been to a retirement party for a family member or something like that? It felt like family, because Miguel Cabrera is family. It's one of the reasons I'm glad that he's getting this new job as a special assistant to the president of baseball operations, because he's going to stay with the family. And I feel like now Miguel Cabrera and the Tigers are synonymous.
It's really funny because, like, he won a World Series with the Florida Marlins, and like, no, hardly anyone associates him with the Marlins. He's a Tigers, like, when he goes into the Hall of Fame, he's probably gonna be wearing a Tigers hat, and that's wild to me. That, like, the team he won, it's kind of the similar with Pudge Rodriguez, where Pudge Rodriguez left the Tigers. Like, yeah, he won 2 World Series with the Marlins, and like, you still think of him as the Detroit Tigers catcher. Like, that's wild to me that they have such an impact for this city, and like, I appreciate it a lot. Not to say everyone should care about sports, because if you don't like sports, you don't have to like sports. But like, I feel like if you care about a sport, you should at least somewhat care about your own hometown teams, and these people made you care about the Tigers.
I hope for the fans of Detroit and for Miguel that we find our way into winning a World Series while he's in the front office, because he deserves a ring, right? Front office people get rings, whether it's up top, whether in the future he finds some sort of coaching role. I don't know exactly what the final setup will be for him. I would love to see him get that ring, even though it wouldn't be for playing. I'd like to see him get one through the Tigers somehow, and I would like to see that happen for the fans of Detroit, because, man, we are suffering.
I mean, it still matters. Like, I know I was watching a video about Steve Kerr, who's the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, and they're like, he has 9 rings, and someone's like, that's kind of a misconception because he's won 4 of them as a coach. And I'm like, yeah, he's won 9 rings total. It doesn't matter whether he's a player, coach, assistant manager, trainer. He's a part of an organization that won. He deserves. So, like, yeah, people say it doesn't mean as much. It means just as much, because he's still building the organization, whether he's hitting dingers at first base, making plays, or whether he's helping to make calls to make the organization better. Like, either or, like, it still matters. So, yeah, I'd love to see him get one too.
To be honest, I think it's an even greater show of his skill, because it's in multiple modes of the game of baseball, right? Like, you remember that saying that people have said before, if you can't play, coach. If you can't coach, umpire, that kind of thing, or however it goes. I don't really get into that, because I think that all those roles are important for a team. Anybody who's been around an organization knows that, like, team is a real thing, especially in these kinds of sports.
If you build a team great, then the team will, and with the good coaches, the team will play well. If you build a team poorly with not great coaches, you could have the best players in the world, but if you assemble them the wrong way with improper coaching, they'll play terrible. You could have the best. That's kind of how the Minnesota Twins were with Ron Gardenhire. They had like 2 really good players and then a bunch of really bad players, but because they were put in such positions to do well, he always overachieved with them. Always overachieved. Joe Mauer would have to play well, so would Justin Morneau, but the rest of that team was not good at all. And he would always somehow get them into the playoff chase. And that's just because he built the team in a proper way with front office and his own coaches and his own tactics. And like, that's that's what you want to see as like an organization. Like if you have the best players, and obviously you'll play a bit better. But if you have not great players, you should still be able to compete and like do well. And the Tigers kind of set themselves up with that. At the end of the year, they kind of had a bit of a streak, not much. They were doing a bit better than the beginning of the year. Obviously, they're not going to the playoffs, but they finished second in the division, which is not where a lot of people saw them. A lot of people are kind of tabbing them like the Lions to say like they have a good chance next year to make a big leap. I'd be interested to see that because you want to care about hometown teams.
100%. And this town, this really showed. There's an article in the Free Press, and I will hand it to the headline saying that, this really showed, and that last game showed what Tigers fandom can be. I'm somebody who, I remember the last playoff push. I was there in the ballpark. I loved that. That was an electric time. And this town still loves baseball. And I think one of the reasons why it's just fallen out of favor as much is because it's hard when a team loses so bad,
When the Tigers are doing well, and I remember the last playoff push as well, they say, always capitalize in the playoffs and the World Series and the finals because you don't know if you're going to be back. The Tigers felt like they would be back. Like, I understood that, yeah, that's a saying, and I've played sports, and I understand you get to the semifinals of something, and then the next year you crash out in the first round and don't even make the playoffs. But, the Tigers felt set to keep competing to go to the World Series and eventually win one. And then the fall off was so steep that it was jarring. And I think that kind of pushed some people away as well because they were so used to this team competing for the pennant, competing for other things, and now all of a sudden they can't even get into the playoffs.
Let's talk about the Detroit Lions. That was a win. I loved seeing it, 34-20 over the Packers. I am here for this age of the Lions owning two football teams.
Yeah, no, I heard people talking about Lambeau Field was like really blue. And I was like, sure, yeah. And then I looked at a picture from above and I was like, wow. In my entire life, being a 33-year-old Detroit native, I have never seen the Lions go into Lambeau Field and like smack the Packers around as if like this was their field and then leave with the entire stadium being blue. I mean, Penei Sewell walked off the field and he's like, this is Ford Field. He looked up, he's like, look at all this blue. This is Ford Field. And I've never, ever, I thought I'd never see that in my lifetime. And like, it was crazy. It was nuts. They beat Packers fans before the game were like, oh yeah, we got it. They beat those fans in submission like, maybe this isn't going to be our year. I watched so many people on social media sites go from like, yeah, this is us. We got an interception the first play. And like, they went from that to like, maybe this isn't our year after all. Like that was crazy to see. They beat the optimism out of those fans. I've never seen that before with the Packers because the Packers were always this team who would play against the Lions. And of course you might win at Ford Field or the Silverdome, but come to Lambeau and like Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers would just, make you hate the team for that day. They would somehow figure out a way to go for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns and like crush your team's spirit. And there's even that one time that backup came in and Matt Flynn, he threw 6 touchdown passes. And then that one game got him a bunch of contracts. And like, I don't know why he's not sending the Lions money every single year because he's not good. But because he went and threw for 6 touchdowns in one game, people are like, yo, he could be a starter. So he owes the Lions money for that. It was a complete game. They dominated them on offense, dominated them on defense, special team. It was just, it blew my mind.
I mean, I've always been kind of like, we're going to win the NFC North. After this game, we got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of season to go. But the team plays like this. This is a team that's in the playoffs and wins the NFC North.
Figured they'd make the playoffs before, maybe as a wild card, but like the Bears are bad. The Bears gave up like a 27-point lead to lose to like Denver, and Denver's terrible. Minnesota is like spiraling out. Green Bay's having an identity crisis with their new players pulling in. They have Jordan Love at quarterback who would have some growing pains, obviously, but like he struggled a bit more than I thought people expected. This team looks like they should win the North. I don't know if they're going to make any noise in the playoffs per se, but like, yeah, them winning the North, I wouldn't say it feels like a lock, but like feels pretty close to a definite thing. And David Montgomery's come in. Obviously, he hasn't come in and been like, running for 400 yards in 4 games, but like he's come in and been consistent, been a nice smash mouth in between the tackles runner. Jahmyr Gibbs is able to help on the wings. I know a lot of fantasy players want to see him get more touches, but like honestly, I don't care about them. Like he could get 0 touches and they could win and I'd be happy. I know they wouldn't, but fantasy sports sometimes is a little nutty. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's a bona fide star. Last year, I thought he was on his way to becoming a star. This year, he's the guy. He reminds me so much of Golden Tate, except for the fact that he's not a jerk. Like Golden Tate was intentionally like mean to like a point. I remember his touchdown against the Vikings where in the overtime where he caught the ball, broke a tackle, and could have just walked into the end zone. He chose to somersault because why not? Like, because whatever. But Amon-Ra St. Brown shows all those great qualities that he has. And like that's what you need as a receiver in today's day and age. You need a guy who can beat you deep, but also a guy who can go across the middle, take some hits, break some tackles, and keep going. And it's like when he gets the ball in his hand, everyone's like, "What's he doing next? What's he doing next?" Like you're excited for it. It's not like, "All right, he's going to get it and go down or get it and go out of bounds." Just there's a lot of excitement on the offense and the defense. I'll admit, I've admitted many times before. I'll say it again. I was wrong about Aiden Hutchinson. I was. Watching him in college, he looked like he had one tool, didn't really use it very well. And I was concerned about that, him being the Lions' overall pick and them saying he's shown that he's evolved as a player. And I will happily admit I was wrong there. 100%. He is on his way to becoming a burgeoning star in this league. The rookies they've drafted in the defense too have been playing well. Brian Branch, like, oh my God, he's laying the hammer back there in the secondary. It's honestly insane how all these people they've drafted in the first few rounds have like contributed really well. Even Jack Campbell hasn't really contributed that much as a linebacker. Like when he gets called upon, he does work. And like that's what you want to see as a rookie. Maybe you don't get to play as much, but when you get in there, your name is being called. Even if you only play 10 plays, but your name gets called 8 times, that means you're doing something. That's 80%, you're doing something. And that's what you want from a Dan Campbell team is just go in there and like don't half-ass anything. Whole ass it. Even if you're making a mistake, just 100% go full out, and then we'll redress it later. And that's what these Lions players are doing right now. They're flying around, and that's what you want to see if you're a fan of a football team.
Is there anywhere in their schedule, looking ahead, where you're looking at those games and going, if they win these or these couple, you're going to change your mind that they might make a splash in the playoffs?
If they contain Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, that's really it. I mean, the Buccaneers are like all right, but the Buccaneers really like their one game against a team that really was good. They lost. They've beat 3 not very good teams. So the only team that's left in the schedule that I'm looking at that I'm like, ooh, that's going to be tough is the Ravens. I mean, the Chargers have a high-powered offense, but like, their defense isn't really that great. They got bailed out against the Raiders because one of their former players made a bonehead play. So like, honestly, I looking at the schedule, I hate to say it because it feels like I'm about to jinx them, but I don't see how they don't win 12 games.
Do I need to get the blue Kool-Aid out? I didn't have it with me. Do I need to get it out? Do I need to go make it some?
Not yet, but like I'm looking now and they have the Panthers up next who are bad. They have the Buccaneers who I said haven't beaten anyone important. They have the Ravens who have a dynamic MVP type quarterback, so that's something to look for. They have the Raiders who are just a mess. The Chargers, the Bears who we've talked about. They have the Packers at home, who I think at that point might just be broken. They have the Saints, who are not doing well. The Bears again. The Broncos, who their only win is against the 0-4 Bears. Vikings, Cowboys, Vikings. I don't see how they don't win at least 11, 12 games. I don't. I'm looking now, and like maybe obviously stuff can change as the season goes on, but just looking right now, I don't see it. Like I expect them to have 11, 12 wins at the end of the season.
I'm excited about all this progress, but here's the thing. Jameson Williams is coming back. They've kind of changed some things with his punishment. Do we even need him now?
I mean, yes. Right now, I don't think he'll be able to play. I know he's been dealing with a hip injury. I don't know how healthy he is right now. I think he's probably closer to being healthy than not. But yeah, I mean, he can take some weeks off to get ready. You always want a dynamic person in the offense. Always. You never will turn down a dynamic receiver in your offense. Jameson Williams can be that. I do know that he's maybe lost a little bit of a step since college with all the injuries. He's still a physical bruising receiver who needs to be. He can make some plays in the run game. He can make some plays passing to where he's not going to get just blown up. I don't really know if they need him back like as quickly as like last year. Last year they kind of needed him because the receiver core wasn't that great. This year, like they're kind of humming a little bit. maybe you don't mess up chemistry. Like maybe you come back and maybe you take a reduced role for a little bit until we can get your reps up. But right now, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, Marvin Jones Jr. I think they're fine right now.
I almost don't want to talk about this, Fletcher Sharpe, but I feel like we need to. And I feel like we need to because we got listeners who love Detroit City FC. But I'll be honest, that on-field play does not love them back. This has been a very tough week for Detroit City, and I think we've kind of shown our tails on this one.
They caked the bed. They caked the bed. Like they caked the bed. It's not like there's really no other way to say it. Like they were told, hey, the rest of the season is in your hands. You have Tulsa behind you. You have Miami in the rearview mirror. All you got to do is win a few games, and you'll be fine. And they said, you know what? We're going to go out there and we're not going to score a goal. Like
in 2 games.
And it's not even the fact they're not going to score a goal. 3 of their goals that they've given up, 3 goals in a row, were because a defender tried to head the ball back to the keeper and did it wrong, and the forward came and went around them and tapped the ball into the net. Like, that's like the most basic like play of, hey, I see you, I'm going to head the ball to you, and 3 times in a row, 3 different center backs, 3 very sure-footed, trusting center backs, all were like, nah, I'm going to make this as hard as possible. So, like, and that's not even talking about the double yellow card that one of them, Michael Bryant, picked up for, honestly, if it was something that happened, it's happened to me before, where he grabbed someone's hair and gave someone an elbow. I had my hair grabbed. I'm a pretty docile person in the field myself. I had my hair grabbed once in a game, like 7-8 years ago, because I was going by a guy, and I almost got up and I had to be restrained. And the guy, Tejada, who he's hair grabbed, he's much better than I am. Because grabbing someone's hair like that when they're trying to move, you could do some damage to their neck. So the fact that he did that and was like, what did I do? Nah, no. You... If I were Trevor James and I'm not, your season's over. You can just sit on the bench because we need you right now. At that point of the game, it was 3-0 to Colorado Springs, and you choose to pick up a really 2 dumb yellow cards back to back. Now you can just be done for the season. You can just ride the exercise bike while we're playing because like clearly something is up and you just don't care. If that's how you feel, that's fine, but you're letting your team down. I'm not going to go to letting down the fans and organization. You're letting your teammates down, people who battle with you every week in and week out. But play on the field has just been, it's like they've just said, you know what, we're not making the playoffs. That's fine.
There were other defensive mistakes that we saw that Nate Steinwasser did not deserve this. And now you've even got the Miami FC in 8th spot. Now, we thought they were dead.
Miami FC was so far in the rearview mirror. Like they were so, which also speaks to how Tulsa just didn't really seize opportunities. But Miami FC was so far behind where it's like, all right, well, whatever. And then I was watching that game that they're playing in Indy 11, and the broadcaster were talking like, okay, well, Tulsa's down to Charleston right now, and Detroit's down to Indy 11, and Miami's up 1-0 at Hartford, so now they're the 8th seed, and I'm like, what? What? So, like, yeah, that just shows how far you've fallen. You've fallen so far that a team who was not even really expecting to get back into the playoffs was like, oh, we have a chance? Here we go. Let's take our chance. And of course, the catalyst is Hartford, who's just like, we'll give everyone goals because we can't defend anything. I don't know. It's startling when you're the thing you build your team on, which is your defense. You talk about you have the best defense in the league and the best keeper in the league, and your defense just folds when it matters, and you leave your keeper out to dry. And unfortunately for soccer statistics, where they rate you like 1 through 10 for a game, they don't really account for your defense being terrible. They just really account for pure numbers if you make a save or not. So Nate's numbers the last few games have been terrible, but they're not his fault. He's been doing the best he can, but they've just been letting people run full on at him, and there's really nothing you can do at that point as a keeper unless you just want to foul somebody. But yeah, this is bad play, and I don't know what the next step is going forward. I do know the next head coach coming in is going to have his hands full with how to organize this team going forward. But yeah, there's some people there now who should not be there next year, and there's some people they need to bring in to fill those gaps, and fill those gaps properly, not fill those gaps by making a player switch to a position that they shouldn't be playing and then getting rid of them when they can't play it.
That regardless if we make the playoffs, because I guess it's still theoretically possible. We are 1 point out, but we got 2 games to go. We should be able to beat Loudoun, but Pittsburgh is going to be a difficult one. It's entirely possible, but here's the deal. Either way, we need a rebuild. You cannot take this team to next year. Like, this whole team staying close to the same as it was last year was a terrible idea at the beginning of the season. I remember all the hell you got when you agreed with John Morrissey. And when it comes to on-field play, they hit all those grades. They just weren't that team. I don't know why we're not playing Dario Suarez. I don't know why. Like, I see the hashtags of free Dario. I agree. I just don't get what's happening here. And it's clear that we need to make some changes to compete in this league, and we're also going to need to spend money, because if we don't, we're going to be in the same place or lower next year, because the harsh reality is, whatever you want to say as far as the best team in the league, I think organizationally, there's a lot of great things about DCFC. But as far as their on-field product, it's not competitive with the rest of this league anymore.
And I was going to say this for a different day, but I'll talk about it quickly now. My biggest issue is these problems that they've been having have been all season long. They've been from the beginning of the year. We've seen them, and it's been like, hey, again, John Morrissey said he gave DCFC an F for offseason things, and people were like, why? F? Are you serious? You don't like the club? And he got a lot of heck about that. And I was like, look, I mean, the upside, going off potential, is you're bringing in a young striker from England, a big up-top forward from a rival team, the USL League One's defending comeback player of the year, a wily veteran on the wing who's won 2 national championships, a defender who has some MLS pedigree, and all that. That's great. The flip side is all those players, save for one, had major knee injuries within a year. Some of them even had 2. And all the people are coming from losing teams, save for one. Do you really get better bringing in people who are coming in from places where they got drilled all year last year? Is that really helping you? And people are like, well, you're just not being optimistic. I'm like, that's not my job, not to be optimistic. My job is to be truthful. And being truthful is, I hope these pieces work well together, but I don't think they will. And with Dario's thing, I was happy to see him come to Detroit, but I was confused because the position Dario normally plays, Detroit City FC does not have on their roster. So in order for him to play, you have to switch up your tactics to put him in a situation where he's going to succeed. Trevor's pretty rigid, so I didn't understand the move. I think it was more so cap space and to get rid of Tommy McCabe, and also you bring in 2 veterans who, if they don't work out, they can leave next in the offseason, and then they're off your books. I think Brett Levi should be on the roster next year for sure. I think he should be a starter at your left back, but that's a different story. I'm glad to see Dario again in person, but if he's not going to get to play the position he needs to play in, I think he should probably head somewhere that's going to play him the right way. But heck, if he wants to head back to Tulsa, head back to Tulsa. I wouldn't be mad at him at all. I understand why he's not playing. Same with Skage, same with Adrian, same with anyone else on the bench. It's just I also don't understand why they're here if they're not going to play. I don't know what you can do at this point, honestly. I know they're changing managers in the offseason. I know they'll have some financial discussions going forward. I think they'll be done paying back Nisa in terms of money, so I think that should be off the books. So they might have a little bit more money there. But it's see how big the pocketbook is to sign some players. That's really it. That's the biggest thing going forward is how much money do we have to allocate to our front office, to allocate to our roster movements, to allocate to people so we can actually bring in some people who are going to fit the system we want to move. Because every other team that's competing, their players all fit into their system at some point. All the players they have are he can play left wing or right wing. He can play in the attacking mid or whatever. Someone was talking on Reddit. They're like, oh, why does Connor play over Skage? It's because Connor can play on the wing and Connor can play here. And Skage can really only play in one position. And his coach wants him to play somewhere else where he's shown he's not good at it. We've seen a year of him playing last year with Loudon and now playing this year with his team. It's not his position. And he keeps playing him there. So he's like, I'm not going to play him then. And by the coach's logic, that's fair. I put you somewhere, you didn't succeed, and you're going to come off. Unfortunately, you're putting him somewhere where he's not supposed to succeed, and, whatever. But yeah, it's just off-season can't come soon enough for them.
All right, Fletcher Sharpe, so good to talk to you.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
As always, feedback 313-789-3211 or dailydetroit@gmail.com. We will be back in your podcast feeds tomorrow and every weekday, sharing what to know and where to go in Metro Detroit. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.